It happened in 1981, in a small rural village in West Germany. Siegfried, 9 years old, ran across the bitter snow, tears freezing to his cheeks. It was Christmas Day, and not long ago he'd been so happy. He was celebrating with his family, his mother, his father, and his young sister, the centers of his universe, when that monster had attacked and destroyed everything he'd ever known. The White Terror, the destroyer of Christmas cheer, the Yule Man, Scp-4666. Though of course, young Siegfried had no idea. In hindsight, Siegfried's parents had been noticing strange things in the lead-up to Christmas Day. Unfamiliar bumps and knocks, strange smells coming from the attic, the occasional tall, dark silhouette on the horizon outside their isolated old farmhouse. But in all the hustle and bustle of the season, nobody really paid the proper attention to all the signs of an incoming Weissnacht event. Every eerie feeling was just written off as stress or overactive imaginations. None of the Geist family knew about the true danger they were facing until they woke up to see the Yule Man standing over them, sharpening a rusty blade and staring at them with hungry, sadistic eyes. "Merry Christmas," the creature rasped and chuckled. Siegfried was lucky to escape alive, but of course he would never see his family again. He'd be picked up a day or so later, traumatized, catatonic, and almost frozen to death. When he was finally able to speak again, he spoke of a monster having killed his family. When the police investigated his home and found the remains, they deemed it to be the work of an all-too-human serial killer, and poor Siegfried was entered into the foster system. Years of work with psychiatric professionals tried to convince young Siegfried that the monster he claimed to see, the unnaturally tall, gnarled, bony freak with those shimmering black eyes, was merely a product of his trauma. But he knew the truth. He always knew. What he encountered that day, the thing that took his family, was nothing less than a true monster. And at 9 years old, Siegfried made a vow he would one day kill the monster, no matter what it took. When Siegfried was finally adopted and returned to school, he did everything he could to apply himself academically. He had no interest in friends or romantic relationships, even as he grew into his teenage years. The only thing that drew his interest, in addition to the perfection of his academic life, was his own private research into the supernatural. He became an expert in all things occultic and anomalous, sightings of ghosts, phantoms, aliens, and monsters. He wanted to know it all. No, needed to know it all. He would arm himself with knowledge, wanting to know everything he could in advance of the confrontation that would be his final destiny. He also began obsessively researching attacks similar to the ones that killed his family, and found an eerie pattern seemingly to unfold all over the Northern Hemisphere. During the 12 days of Christmas, entire families would be found dead in their homes, mutilated horrifically, often with children having gone completely missing. They happened far enough apart in terms of time and space that no connection was drawn between the events, all just random attacks according to the police and media. Weren't the connections obvious? He didn't understand it. It was almost like there was some kind of sweeping cover-up obscuring the true culprit behind all these killings. The same beast that destroyed his life. As Siegfried, now known to most as Dr. Geis, ascended through his time at university, he became one of Germany's foremost scholars on the occult, with several published papers and books that drew fascination of fellow experts and laymen alike. But most importantly of all, Siegfried's work got the attention of the SCP Foundation. They reached out to the ambitious rising star of the paranormal world and offered him a research position. Dr. Geis was elated and said that he would happily take the role if they answered one question for him. Did they know anything about a horrific humanoid monster that attacked families across the Northern Hemisphere around Christmas time? This was the moment when Dr. Siegfried Geis, after decades of searching, finally came to know about SCP-4666. He had access to all of the SCP Foundation's information on the monster, putting him several steps closer to what had always been his ultimate goal: killing that godforsaken thing. But this would be easier said than done. After all, if the Yule Man was easy to track, the Foundation would have captured and contained him long before now. His attacks could occur anywhere across the Northern Hemisphere, making catching him the world's largest game of whack-a-mole. But this was a game that Dr. Guise had more than enough patience to play. Over the following years, Dr. Guise worked as hard as humanly possible, not just at the case of SCP-4666, but at every piece of work the Foundation had to offer him. Much like his ruined childhood, Guise made no effort to interact, no effort to form social connections. He just worked and worked and worked and worked with single-minded passion, soon developing a reputation as one of the most hard-working and dependable figures in the SCP Foundation's European division. It was this kind of work ethic that soon saw him promoted to senior researcher, and then a site director. He had more control over information, resources, and manpower than ever before. It was almost time. He could sense it. Delegating other tasks to his subordinates, Dr. Guise began to work on his masterpiece, an advanced algorithm connecting police, social media, and surveillance databases across the Northern Hemisphere. You see, while Dr. Guise had never faltered in his quest, neither had the Yule Man. Every year, more families disappeared or were horrifically murdered, and every death weighed on Guise. He saw them as a personal failing of his inability to fulfill his destiny. But the Yule Man was a creature of habit, and it would be that very adherence to habit that Guise used to destroy it. Using the algorithm he created, they would perfectly track and triangulate the home most likely to be the subject of a dreaded Weissnacht event, with greater accuracy and precision than ever before. The year was 2022. Dr. Guise was convinced that this time, he would be the one to claim victory and vengeance. There was one thing he didn't tell his Foundation compatriots, though. As he put the pieces in place for the final showdown, he had no intention of containing the Yule Man. This time, he would destroy it. Using his newfound influence as a well-respected site director, he requested the transfer of a few high-profile anomalies, as well as the services of a crack mobile task force death squad. It was time. The Yule Man watched the house from a distance. He'd been observing for days, watching the nice, happy family within. What pleasure it would bring him to destroy them, and take what's left to his workshop for further fun. Tonight would be the night that he claimed them. They were all blissfully unaware, and lived in an isolated rural area where nobody but him would hear all the wonderful screaming. The second the lights went out inside the house, he would strike, and bring about some Christmas fear. When the last window went dark, the Yule Man drew a long, rusty blade out of his bag of tricks and approached the house. He crept in through one of the windows. Locks had never been a problem for him. This whole process had played out hundreds of times. He barely even needed to think about it now. He crept in past the presents around the Christmas tree, found the stairs, and began to climb. He'd find them in their beds, one by one, and take his time, savoring the pain, savoring the fear. He went into the youngest one's bedroom first, his lips pulled back into a manic grin. There was the little boy, tucked in under his quilt, like a present waiting to be unwrapped. He grabbed the sheet with his long, gnarled fingers and pulled it back, only to see a plastic dummy underneath, with a stun grenade fixed to its chest. Before the Yule Man could even react, the stun grenade exploded into his face, blinding him with a sudden white light and ringing in his ancient ears. The next thing he heard was a rugged military voice yelling, "Squad Alpha, move in!" Seconds later, the upstairs landing was filled with mobile task force operatives with assault rifles. They aimed and opened fire into the Yule Man, peppering him with painful bullets. He wasn't used to his victims fighting back like this. Truthfully, it even caught him off guard. But sadly for those brave task force operatives, it would not be enough to kill him. The Yule Man gripped his rusty knife and lunged at Squad Alpha. Moments later, they were all dead, and the furious Yule Man was trudging back down the stairs. There had been no satisfaction in this slaughter. How had they caught him like this? Perhaps he'd go eat some of his servants in his workshop to make himself feel better. As he walked back across the living room, past the Christmas tree, past all the presents, the television flickered into life. Staring at him from the screen was the grinning face of Dr. Siegfried Guise, now 50 years old. And the most insane part was that the Yule Man somehow recognized him. the one who got away 41 years prior. "Hello, old friend. You're looking a little glum," Siegfried said on the screen. "I take it that you did not enjoy the surprise party I just threw for you. Don't worry, the night isn't over yet. After all, you haven't even opened your presents." With that, the presents under the tree, which were actually packed with C4 plastic explosives, detonated, leveling the entire house with the Yule Man still inside. The explosion could be heard for miles as a great pillar of smoke rose up into the air. Several hundred meters away, Dr. Siegfried Guys waited and watched, flanked by Foundation agents and more mobile task force soldiers, taking in the majesty of the explosion. Dr. Guys remained steely-eyed and watched the blaze. Somehow he knew that even that would not be enough to end the monster permanently. He nodded to the lieutenant he'd brought with him.
"Squad out! Squad Bravo! Time to engage!"
The man barked in response. The remaining agents and MTF operatives, armed with assault rifles and submachine guns, descended on the burning wreckage of the house. Moments later, a tall, dark figure, the Yule Man, injured but alive, crawled out of the blaze. Immediately, the team opened fire, giving the monster everything they had. But once again, everything was not enough. The creature pulled out two long, rusty knives and leaped into the fray, making short work of the Foundation brass. Soon enough, it stood alone on blood-stained snow, until it caught another bullet in the head. Dr. Siegfried Guys was standing there, the last one alive to face the Yule Man, leveling a revolver. The Yule Man scowled. Guys held his steely gaze. "We meet again, at long last," Siegfried said. "You killed my family. You've killed so many others. Tonight, it is your turn, Yule Man. This is your Weissnacht." Guys opened fire as the Yule Man charged towards him, taking each shot in stride. Even as the Yule Man closed the distance, Guys didn't flinch. His resolve was steely. It made the Yule Man feel confused and furious that he didn't detect an ounce of fear in this man. Even when he drove a knife into the site director's stomach, Siegfried dropped to his knees and collapsed as the Yule Man ripped the knife back out. His gun clattered to the ground. It had been a mortal blow, and still, he seemed unfazed.
"Why aren't you afraid?"
The Yule Man growled. Siegfried spat blood and said,
"You took my family 41 years ago. Everything since then has just been killing time until I got to see them again. Where you're going, all you'll ever see are flames and torment."
The Yule Man, furious, stabbed Siegfried again, this time through the heart. The doctor was dying, his life's work having seemingly amounted to nothing. But with the last of his strength, he reached into his coat and pulled out something, a little gift he'd requested from one Dr. Alto Clef before putting his plan into action. Dr. Siegfried Guys lifted a photo of SCP-096 right in front of the Yule Man's eyes.
"Merry Christmas,"
he said with his last breath. The Yule Man was confused. A photograph? Was that it? Was that really this foolish little boy's trump card after all this time? What a waste. Then, without a moment's warning, SCP-096 barreled into the Yule Man, sending them both rolling across the snow. One of Siegfried's preparations was to have SCP-096's containment cube temporarily relocated to only a mile away from the ambush site, to avoid collateral damage. If everything else failed, then SCP-096 would be their Hail Mary pass, their finishing move. And it worked marvelously. As strong and evil as the Yule Man was, he'd been weakened by the night's battle, and the Shy Guy was an order of magnitude more powerful than his sadistic foe. The Yule Man screamed in horror as SCP-096 set upon him with claws and teeth. After hundreds of years inflicting it on others, the Yule Man had died in terror, and Dr. Siegfried Guys had died with a smile on his face. Want to own an SCP of your own? Go to scpswag.com for premium anomalous merchandise. Now go check out SCP-4666 the Yule Man and SCP-096 Origin Theories for more on today's terrifying combatants.